Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. I am your host, Robert Smith, along with my co-host, Adam Carver-Stelman. Today, we'll be discussing how the defensive line, edge, and linebacker players did in the Combine on day one. Adam, let's talk Combine and how this affects the Seahawks.
Yeah, let's. So we've been facing technical and personal difficulties here. We've been hoping to do this twice a day to kind of give you guys a preview and a recap. Today we're just going to do the recap for the defensive line, and then hopefully we'll get this all working out. These are the troubles with with changing up your format and going live. There were a few guys that definitely shined out on the defensive line. We had a lot of big guys that performed a lot better than I think they were expected to, and a few that disappointed us. But overall, this is looking like a pretty athletic defensive line class, and I think the Seahawks are going to have a few opportunities throughout to kind of add to the trenches. Yeah.
No, I agree. There are some guys who really stepped up. Jalen Redmond looked great in all of his testing numbers. I think he's somebody who really improved his draft stock. I think Bresee answered a lot of questions. I know he had a down year due to personal issues and due to injury. I know he had a kidney infection that took him out for a large chunk of the season. He came back, passed medical, did really well in all the drills, looked smooth in the field work. He's somebody who really solidified his place in that first round conversation. Kalijah Kancey showed he was an athletic freak. Everybody's keeps confirming those Aaron Donald comparisons, and we'll see how that works once he gets to the league. But yeah, there are a lot of guys.
Setting that guy up for disappointment.
But yeah, so
I think that you named quite.
Going into this day, I was looking for a few things. Along the defensive line, I wanted to look at the big guys. How are the big nose tackles going to perform? Specifically, I was looking at Siaki Ika, Mazi Smith, Keondre Coburn, and Jerrod Clark. The Seahawks need to fill that nose role, even if we have returning players there. I think we need somebody for the future. And so I'm looking at one of those guys to possibly be a target. Clark really stood out in that group. And I know Mazi Smith didn't work out. I think he's still coming off of an injury, or at least that's what he said. So he's going to do his work at his pro day. We expect him to be more of an athletic, sort of freaky, twitchy guy. So that may change things around. But I think Clark took a step up in that nose tackle role.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a couple guys in that kind of like same vein that stood out to me. But definitely Clark was one of them. Smaller school, close to Carolina, not really one of those big name schools, but has tended to produce some decent NFL players over the years. Brian Bresee was definitely the guy that I was watching most. I think especially after the Jalen Carter news broke, he was a guy that I thought, okay, if they're not going Carter, Bresee should be the guy that I think they should target, or at least look to target in that first round with a higher pick. Another guy was Keanu Benton, who had been getting some draft buzz a little bit earlier. Wasn't the guy that I had on my radar until after there started to be a little bit of talk about him. And he looked great as well. Good moves for a big guy.
Yeah, really like those guys. As far as the edge category, I thought that, okay, everybody's been calling him the Northwestern guy, but I'm going to attempt his name. So it's Adetomiwa, Adebawore, I believe, something along those lines.
I'll let you do that.
Elevated himself above the class. 280 plus pounds, running a sub 4.540. Looked great in all of the agility drills. I mean, this guy came to play.
Yeah, I mean, there's like I said, I think that this is a great opportunity for the Seahawks to kind of, as you said, kind of rebuild that depth along the defensive line. There are a lot of guys that look like they've got a chance to come into the league and make an impact right off the bat on day one. So I think this is working out really well for Seattle to kind of come in and reset or restock.
Yeah, there were a couple guys, I think, in this group who really either confirmed what everybody was thinking or put themselves out there as somebody that people need to watch. Byron Young, the edge out of Tennessee, he looked really well at the Senior Bowl. I know he had been getting some buzz, some second, third round attention. He put up a 4.43 in the 40. He jumped out of the gym. He's looked really good in the field work. He's somebody that I think is moving up draft boards and surprised a lot of people. Another guy.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch too much of him. Oh, go ahead.
Obviously confirming what everybody thought was Nolan Smith from Georgia. He had that pec injury. He's been training for the combine. So really had his body control, his technique, everything down for these drills, or at least the 40, because that's the only thing I participated in were the athletic testing, not the field work. But yeah, so he went out and ran a sub 4.4, a 4.39, and really kind of showed himself as one of those really explosive guys. So we'll see how all that athleticism in this class is going to translate to the NFL.
Yeah, another guy that I had my eye on was KJ Henry. Another guy out of Clemson. We already talked about Bresee, and we haven't mentioned Myles Murphy yet, but he didn't participate in a lot of the drills. KJ Henry stood out to me. I mean, not overly fast, not overly strong, but he put up some good numbers. 31 on the bench. He ran a 4.6 3.40. This is a guy that I think is kind of being overlooked along that Clemson defensive line because of the big names like Myles Murphy and Brian Bresee. He's a guy that in a lot of mock drafts that I've been doing, I've been targeting later in the draft, 5th, 6th round guy. So this is a day 3 guy that may have moved up the board a little bit. I don't think he's quite in the day 2 category, but he's still a guy that I would watch, especially if the Seahawks end up collecting a few picks later in the draft.
Definitely somebody to watch. I do need to do a little more tape work on him. He looked pretty good out there. And so that's now going to cause me to go back and do a little more homework.
Yeah, there was a few of those guys today. Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just going to say there was a few guys that I'm going to have to go back and kind of find tape on because I'm not a big college football guy. I do watch my local teams. But this will be my first year really diving deep into some of these guys. So I'm excited about that.
I was really surprised in this edge class by Jose Ramirez out of Eastern Michigan. He tested really well. He ran a 4.73 in the 40. His 10-yard split was one of those that you look for, but he tested near the top of every athletic category. Jumping, 3-cone, shuttle, all of that short area quickness and agility. He was near the top of the class. And he's a guy who's looking like, before the combine at least, 6th, 7th round pick. He's somebody who might end up going in the 4th round just due to how he tested at the combine.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of guys in that category, mainly because we had a lot of guys that are bigger names, guys like Jalen Carter, guys like Myles Murphy that we mentioned, Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech, who didn't participate in the agility drills. And nothing against those guys. These are a lot of guys that are already projected to go on day 1. They really couldn't have raised their draft stock at all, but it's kind of interesting to see a lot of those guys not participate. So some of these guys that are a little less known or a little farther down the draft board can shine out. And possibly move up their draft stock.
Yeah, I think it was a good opportunity for him. Tyree Wilson, technically coming off a broken foot, I think, like an actual injury that precluded him from working out because he might not be at 100%. How disappointing was it, though, that Jalen Carter didn't participate in any of the work at the combine?
I mean, that's the big one here. I mean, for those of you that haven't heard, that are watching this, Jalen Carter was arrested, or actually, I'm sorry, there were 2 arrest warrants issued in his name for an incident that took place earlier in the year, a traffic accident that came out of a apparently street racing that ended up causing a death to a teammate of his. He ended up turning himself in, but was later released and returned to the combine. But yeah, I'm not really sure what the argument there is for him, because I think we're kind of expecting this to hurt his draft stock. So I'm not really sure if participating would have helped his draft stock or not. But yeah, it was a little bit disappointing not seeing him out there.
Yeah, he came out earlier before the arrest warrant news came out and said that he wasn't going to work out. So that was something going into this that was already determined. I never understood that. I get some of the field work, being on an unknown surface, but getting a chance to do athletic testing, I want those extra 2 reps that I'm going to get. If I can get 4 chances at the 40 to post the fastest time, I'm going to take that over the 2 from just at my pro day. I don't get it. It's kind of a trend that started probably 15 years ago, agents telling players not to work at the combine. I think it's a big mistake. I think it becomes a negative on the player, because you want guys, especially at positions like linebacker, defensive end, defensive tackle, who are going to go out there and be a gamer, who are going to play and take every opportunity to show that they're the best. And when people don't work out at the combine, I think it kind of gives them the diva tag. And that's not what you want from somebody who plays in the box.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I think we also have to consider part of the reason that guys do that is because pro days are catered to them to help them highlight. It gives them a little bit more time to also kind of get right or work with trainers to get the best times, the highest number of reps they can get, and it works. Unfortunately, teams fall for it all the time. Zach Wilson is a great example. Amazing pro day. I mean, the man looked like a surefire bet. Jets take him at number 2 overall, and that hasn't really worked out for them. And this happens all the time. So I get it. No, I don't like it. I'm probably not as against it as you are, but because I think I'm a little more sympathetic to the players, and I understand why it is they take that route. But yeah, it is it is one of those things where it doesn't end up helping the teams for sure.
But it is what it is. It will happen every year. It's just disappointing when we can't see those top of the class type of players work out. Linebackers also combine yesterday. And I think we had some good work from the linebackers. I specifically went into this linebacker group looking at the pass rush players who were part of it. I wanted to see how BJ Ojulari, because, English, I can't speak right now, and how Andre Carter did.
Spelling's hard.
So between those 2 guys, I think Ojulari, in the field work, he looked pretty good. I don't think he did a lot of the athletic testing. But I also was looking at Andre Carter. Andre Carter actually disappointed me in his work for the combine. I think he hurt his draft stock from the numbers that he put up. He's somebody who's going to need to redeem himself at his pro day. It's things like his broad jump. He only broad jumped 9 feet, which I believe was the bottom of the class. His vert was sub 30 as well. And he benched like in the teens. So it's something that you have to watch out for. And I'm not sure if he's going to recover to get back in that first round conversation. He might have solidified himself as a second round guy due to his performance at the combine.
Yeah, I watched a few of the linebackers. I was a little bit more interested in some of the inside linebackers, guys like Jack Campbell, who I've been paying a lot more attention to, mainly because his name has been kind of floated out there as a possible day 2 pick for the Seahawks. Guys like Noah Sewell out of Oregon, and then I'm going to butcher his name, but the linebacker out of Alabama, Henry Tuotuo. All these guys are looking like thumpers, which I think is something the Seahawks need to be focusing on when it comes if they're going to look at inside linebacker. There's another guy that's really interesting to me, mainly because he's a local guy, and that is the linebacker Dan Henley out of Washington State. He is an athletic freak. This is a converted safety. I think he actually started at an offensive position, but he was converted to safety and then linebacker. This is a guy who's been flying up draft boards. He's been mocked several times to Seahawks with one of their day one picks, usually the later one. I'm hoping that this is a guy that we can that'll fall. We can look at him again on day two, because I don't think they're going to address the linebacker the other talent that's out there, but he may have taken himself out of a day two conversation, which is a little disappointing for me.
Yeah, I had Jack Campbell and Dan Henley on my list as well for guys that I was looking at going into the draft. I think Jack Campbell solidified himself as, I'm going to say, the top off the ball linebacker in this class. I know a lot of people may have had some other guys there. I saw him ranked 4th by a lot of the media experts, but he came out and he scored at the top of the class in several categories. His 40 time, his official time was a 4.65, which I don't have a problem with as an off the ball linebacker. They're just going to keep him in the box and he's fine. I want Jack Campbell more now than I did before the combine. So let's find a way to get him on the Seahawks.
Yeah, look, if they're looking, and I think the Seahawks are probably going to look to help that linebacker room. Obviously, we still need to go through free agency and kind of see who they bring in. Fingers crossed for B-Wags. But I do think it's a position that they will address at some point in the draft. And those are a couple of guys that I think they're going to have to, if they're going to go for them, they're going to have to get them on day two. If they end up not going on day one. And Jack Campbell's one of those guys that if he doesn't go on day one, he's going to be going pretty close to the top of the draft of the day two draft. So definitely got to look out for it.
Yeah, I think that kind of hurt Seattle's chances of getting him. I think Seattle, if he was on their board, which who knows what Pete Carroll and John Schneider are thinking, they were probably hoping they were going to be able to get him in that second round, later half of the second round position, and I don't think he'll be there now.
Well, it just kind of depends. Look, I think we're going to see Seattle move up and down this draft board, and I would not be surprised to see them collect a couple of day two picks, hopefully in that higher category by trading back in the first. So, I mean, either way, this is going to be an exciting draft. I mean, there is just, even though this is kind of said to be a down draft year, especially with when it comes to certain position groups, I think there's just a ton of talent in this draft, and I'm really excited to see who is available for the Seahawks when that picks come due.
Yeah, I really want to see John Schneider kind of work his magic and get all of this going. So we'll see what happens in the draft. We'll see how this works. We do have defensive backs at the combine today. So who are you looking forward to seeing from the defensive back group, and what are you keeping an eye on today as you watch the drills?
Yeah, well, there's a few guys. Number one for me has got to be Julius Brents, physical freak coming out of Kansas State. This is a guy who's already drawn tons of comparisons to a guy that was taken by the Seahawks in the 5th round last year, our very own Tariq Woolen. I don't know that he's going to be putting up those same kind of speed numbers, but this guy has a chance to put up a great 40 time today. That's definitely the number one guy I'm going to be looking at when it comes to those agility drills. There are a couple other guys. I mean, Cam Smith is a guy that's been mocked to the Seahawks a few times in that second round. He may have already taken. He may already be shooting up the draft board far enough that he's going to be out of reach for the Seahawks. But if they do go corner in the first round, that's a guy that they should be looking at. and then a name that I'm going to absolutely butcher, so I'm not going to try. The TCU cornerback. This is a much smaller guy, not a guy that I think the Seahawks would have typically looked at, and may not again just because of how it's worked out with Trey Brown being one of the first highly drafted smaller corners. But I'm going to be watching to see this guy because he's a return specialist as well as a cornerback. The guy's got great ball skills, even for being 5'9". And he's got an NFL connection. The great LaDainian Tomlinson is his uncle. So,
and that guy is who?
Sorry, I'm not. I'm going to butcher his name. I think it's Trevius Hodges Tomlinson. I think that's how you pronounce it. Out of TCU.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd like to see how all those guys perform. For me, I'm keeping an eye on the top guys. The Gonzalez, Witherspoon, Joey Porter Jr. These guys, I want to see if they solidify their spot at the top of the defensive back class. That goes with Branch and Skinner as well in the safety group. I also want to see how Kylie Ringo does. Over the summer, he was the number 2 corner on everybody's board. And now I've seen him ranked as low as 9th or 10th on some of these experts' position charts. So I want to see how he does. He should run a fast time. So let's see if he goes out there and wows us and moves up some of these position charts. And then, I'm one for a good story. And so Rajon Wright out of Oregon State was featured on Last Chance U when he was at Laney College in California. I'm watching him just to see how he does. It'd be a good story to see him get drafted. So I want to see how he performs today, specifically in the field work. I want to see how he works through the drills and if he actually has some of those NFL caliber traits in the field work. So that's who I'm watching today.
Yeah, this is the defensive backs. I think because of the Seahawks situation in the DB room, it's going to be interesting to see what they do because it's not like we don't have a deep defensive back room. We do. We have a lot of guys on the roster, a lot of really great players on the roster. We just weren't able to stay healthy last year, and I think there's a lot of questions in that room. Now, I think we've got a lot of time before the draft, so it's going to be something to watch to see whether or not these guys are getting healthy. But I think the Seahawks, there's a lot of talent in the defensive back category this year. I think the Seahawks are going to address this position more than once in this draft. So I'm definitely watching these safeties and these cornerbacks today.
I agree. I think they're going to pick a corner and a safety, or at least one of those guys who can play at both positions. Well, that's it. That's what we've got for today. The drills are right about to kick off, the live coverage. So if you're out there watching, go out and watch the live coverage of the Combine, and we will catch you later. As always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.